Thank you to Nick for the intro. Thank you for inviting me here today. It's really, really good to come and talk to you. And hopefully what I'll talk about is of interest to you. And I think Nick's lined us up really nicely on the subjects that I'm going to pick up on in terms of Network Rail and our safety journey and what safety means for us and what I hope safety means for you and all your colleagues as well. But kind of a quick reflection on PWI. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is developing people. You need to be competent. More importantly, not only do you need to be competent, you need to understand where the extent of your competence ends. It's fine not to know everything. I will stand quite clearly here as Chief Health and Safety Officer for Network Rail and go, people expect me to know everything, and I don't. I know a lot, and I know a lot about a lot of things, but am I a genuine expert in certain areas? And I'll go, no, I've got an area of expertise, but I know this person over here or that person over there is the expert, and when I need help, I'll go and get it. And the importance of having institutions like PWI, IOSH, other organisations where you can go and ask and find people who are genuine experts to help you to get the right answer is absolutely critical and not to be missed or forgotten. The other thing I was going to mention about was just, Nick, you mentioned about diversity and inclusion. One of the really clear pieces of evidence that exists over the last 10 years is the importance of diversity and inclusion in teams. Diverse teams are safer. You get different ways of thinking, you get different innovation and ideas coming through, and that importance of getting regular movement through people, developing people into other teams, into other areas, bringing in new talent is absolutely critical. And not just new talent that you can develop and you go, these people have got something about them, they want to do this and they want to do it well, is really important. So I would just really applaud you for improving diversity and inclusion and getting, how do you tackle that? So anyway, I've probably butchered on enough about those sort of starting points, but it was just some really useful reflections. I'm going to talk to you about the safety framework, what Network Rail's been doing and where our journey on safety is going. So just a couple of things to start with, and this builds absolutely on Nick's slide that he started with. That's our safety performance in Network Rail since 2018. Each of those red lines is a person who's dead. They're not here. So look at that. Look at the appalling state of our safety performance. I could point out a number of people and ask you to leave, and that would be those people. They wouldn't be here. And to me, that's the whole purpose of safety, is going, we can't have that. Everyone should come to work, be paid, go home, and importantly, get to their retirement to do what they want to do at the end of their working career, whatever that might be. But people have got to feel inside a personal accountability for safety. Safety is so critical. You can't be glib about it because the outcome is things can go wrong. And as Nick said, near-miss rates, you've had a near-miss, people go, yeah, we had a near-miss, doesn't really matter, does it? Yeah, it does, because sooner or later, the dice rolls the wrong way. And the consequence is that someone's either badly hurt or worse, they're killed. And we need to say that a bit more often in this industry. We've killed people. Us collectively have killed people. You might go, it's a sliver of our accountability or our responsibility, but those people were our colleagues and our friends, and they're not here anymore. And that really hurts me. It's part of the reason I landed up in safety, was I worked on a farm. That was my background, was farming. No one ever told me that farming was actually the most dangerous industry in the UK, other than deep sea fishing. No one ever told me to look after myself. It was only when actually I bumped into one of my mates in the pub, and I went, how you doing? I hadn't seen him for a couple of years, and he went, well, actually, I've got a bit of a problem. He'd turned into a tree surgeon, been up a tree, cut his leg quite badly, landed up in hospital. He was really lucky, didn't bleed to death, didn't fall out of the tree. But actually, at that point, I went, that's a bit of a problem, because I reflected very closely to having done some of those tasks myself. And that was the start of my sort of safety journey of recognising that I had a bit of personal accountability I needed to look after myself, and bad things could happen. But more importantly, companies are here to look after ourselves and us as employees, and we have a duty to make that happen. So having sort of set out a fairly sad picture there, What I also need to say about this chart is, what you can see is we have killed people, but at the same time, our moving annual average has improved. It's now at the lowest ever fatality weighted injury index we've ever had as Network Rail, and that's Network Rail plus our contracting workforce. So there's the holistic picture of us. It's at the lowest ever. You could go, fantastic, and I do have to say that's fantastic because it shows we're improving. But at the same time, we have those catastrophic events where we've lost people. And for yourselves, a slightly wider thought. Nick focused on the track workers, and that's entirely understandable. But there's other people that have been killed there. So we've had Kevin, who was killed at our Eastleigh long rail welded plant. He was crushed inside a machine about 18 months ago, November 2021. He was maintaining a bit of kit, and the kit wasn't properly guarded, and his colleague operated a button that brought two pieces of rail together. Just so happened that those two pieces of rail came together inside a machine, and Kevin was inside that machine. It crushed him. We should have guarded that machine better. Kevin shouldn't have been allowed to get in there with the guarding in the way that it was. There was a permit to work, but the permit to work wasn't being used. Now, those are all about leadership and behaviours. The leadership on that site didn't look after Kevin and his colleagues. The last red line that you can see there on item 11, that was a telecoms engineer called Mike. We're not sure what happened to him other than he was killed in a road traffic accident. He was on his own, gone into work, had delivered a roll of cable out onto site, and then he didn't turn up where we were expecting him to turn up, and subsequently find out that he'd been in an RTA and had been killed outright. So part of the reason for talking about those is we all end up doing multiple jobs. We focus on our job on the railway and think that's the core part, but actually getting to and from the railway safely is a critical thing we need to do. We need to think about the controls. We can start to build in lots of things about driving safety, fatigue, planning of jobs. All of those things fit in here. And it's just critical for us to think about. So, what's Network Rail been doing about this? Because frankly, that's not good enough. Our board took a really personal interest in trying to come up with a new approach. They recognised the poor performance we were having and set about changing that. Now, what you can see there is a new safety framework which they developed, and they've driven and pushed forward. They started to take the leadership that's required to change our safety performance. Still very familiar, you can see everyone home safe every day at the centre of our safety vision. That's what we're all about. If I'm honest with you, I joined Network Rail because I love everyone home safe every day. That's what it means to me. But they set out, we need to do this differently. We need to do some stuff in a different way to change our performance. So what they've asked us to do is, we've got a compelling safety vision, everyone home safe every day, and we're going to focus on 6 key areas. And the whole business is going to focus on those 6 key areas. They're our safety culture, probably fairly understandable, first line assurance, leadership, communication, our life-saving rules, and separating people, trains and machinery. Those are our key things. And every part of Network Rail must focus on that. If regions and functions want to do other things, that's cool, but that's a wraparound. And then finally, we need to have a good check that what we're doing is making a difference and that we have some alignment and we're learning. So round the outside, we've got some governance, and I'll talk to you more about that in a second. But the fundamental part is that compelling safety vision. You've got to make it personal. If it's not personal, do you really care about our staff and our colleagues? And that's what's got to happen. People have got to genuinely care and want to keep people safe. So there's got to be a personal point. So I would say to everyone here, if you don't have a personal commitment to safety, you need to think about that. What do you really want to do? Why do you come to work? Is it so that you get paid so you can go and play golf in the afternoon? Is it so you can get home to your wife and children? Is it so you can get home to your partner? Is it because you've got your mother living with you because she's elderly now and you're the carer for her? There will always be a reason why you need to get home. And there'll always be a reason why your colleagues need to get home. And I'd ask you to think about that and talk to your teams and colleagues about it, because until you get that linkage, you won't have that really strong commitment to achieving everyone home safe every day. So, in terms of our safety framework, what are we doing? So I talked about culture, assurance, leadership, communications. They all blend together. And you might look at that and say, well, what about this and what about that? And the answer is this the golden bullet that will solve everything? And the answer is no. But it's a very good start. And I'll tell you why it's a good start. And you've got to start somewhere, and you've got to be focused. So, to me, assurance is the critical part. If you don't go and check on things, you'll never know whether you're doing it right. So as far as I'm concerned, we have a policy, we have a standard. We should make sure that works out on site. There's only one way to know that, and that's to take your policy or your standard or your work instruction or your risk assessment, whatever it is, and go and check. And the two should align. And our leaders and our managers and our supervisors, our jobs is to make sure that those two align. And if they don't, we need to make them align. So the purpose of going and doing assurance is to check. And it's not to hold a carrot, not to hold a stick over people. It's to coach people. It's to help people. It's to get them competent to do the job that you want them to do. And to go, that was the standard, implement it, please. Sounds very easy, but actually it needs quite a lot of leadership and support to enable that to happen. And so you get into the link between assurance and leadership. Without that leadership, you don't do assurance. Without that leadership, you don't get coaching and support and getting people to do it right. And that automatically drives your safety culture, because you get into a positive cycle there. You start to identify where things aren't right. You start to identify how you can put better controls in, and you can start to identify how to improve and upskill people's competencies to do things correctly. So you'll end up in a really useful cycle of improvement. But you need to apply that to some certain areas. So where do you want to start? We've chosen people, trains and machinery, really for the obvious answers that Nick and I have spoken about. We haven't achieved that. There's lots of other things we haven't achieved. We've got people with broken arms, we've had people with broken legs, but frankly, you can repair those, and that's a fairly glib thing to be able to say, but what we can't repair is when we've killed people. So the focus has been, how do we rectify that one first? And we'll start to make inroads in the others as we come through. So keeping people, trains apart, Nick spoke really passionately about, how do you plan things properly? How do you plan to keep people off the track? How do we use innovation and technology to eliminate that risk? It's not to stop the jobs, but it's to eliminate that risk from people being in front of trains. And we can do it. And as Nick's chart showed on the near miss rate, we can make significant changes. Underpinning that are life-saving rules and communications. Life-saving rules were there, as they said, to save lives, and they clearly haven't. And that comes back to leadership. We haven't enacted, we haven't got people willingly saying to us, woo, this is dangerous. So we are in the process of really pushing those life-saving rules to get people to really understand and remember in the circumstances of where they're working and how they're working, those rules apply. And if they're not safe, or they don't think they're safe, or they don't understand their job, they should use them and invoke them and say, look, I don't really understand what's going on here. I think this is dangerous. Can you just explain how we're going to stay safe? So that links in with the communications and learning from our serious events. So we get RAIB investigations, we get ORR investigations, we get network rail investigations, and regular communications come out about learning and the activities that we can do to improve our safety performance. And the challenge there is, how do we get those enacted and people willingly following them? And again, that comes back to leadership and assurance. We should be able to say, here's the action out of an investigation. This is what it required of us to do. Make sure we can go and do some checks on site and assure ourselves that that's what we're doing. So what's Network Rail doing? Well, we used the RM3 assessment, which I think hopefully many people will have heard of. So used pretty widely across industry, across the rail industry now. ORR's preferred methodology for assessing safety performance. So within Network Rail, each region, each function has gone out and undertaken our own RM3 assessment. So if you're working in the Eastern region, you'll find one of these. I work in Technical Authority with Nick. This is R1 for the Technical Authority. We also do a wraparound of the company, but actually you start to lose a bit of detail, and the actions aren't local and personal. So this is trying to make sure that for us, within our business, we know what we're doing. And this is just the example of, this is Technical Authority's Safety Improvement Plan. This is about 10 months old now. We're just in the process of reassessing the Technical Authority's performance from 2021. Yeah, no, 21-22. And we will update this over the next probably about the next 6 weeks. But you'll see there, what are we doing? So, in the area of leadership, we're doing one-to-one coaching training. We're doing some technical training around safety on IOSH and NEBOSH training. We're implementing a leadership support plan. Some really straightforward steps. Doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, the simpler it is, the more likely it is it's going to resonate with teams and members of staff. Life-saving rules. We, within Technical Authority, have reviewed our life-saving rules. We're going to stick with the life-saving rules we've got. There will be one change coming out in the next couple of months regarding the electrical safety life-saving rule around test before touch. That's likely to change to test before earth, but that's coming. We're just in the process of revising that and checking it. But we'll also be coming out with a strong safety campaign around keeping safety personal and what does it mean to you as an individual. In terms of some of the work that we've been doing around keeping people and trains apart, Nick and the Safety Task Force has obviously been a significant chunk of that, but equally, we've done a huge piece of work, as you can see up there. SIN 199, that was about going out across the whole of Network Rail and looking at every machine that we own in terms of fixed plant, in terms of what I would call a factory environment, and looking at it and checking the guarding arrangements linked to the death of Kevin to go, have we got our guarding arrangements correct? Have we got the right permits to work in these sorts of areas? But it also extends out into public and passenger safety. You know, what are we doing about keeping our passengers safe? How do we make sure that level crossings work in the right way? So it spans a large area of activity. We've also driven a huge amount of work in terms of assurance. So just providing a simple assurance tool. So we use an online computer system now, which we've never had, brought it in about 2 years ago, came in Southern. It's really changed how we look at assurance data, because for the first time we've got data, we can look at it and we can check where we're going. So, just to sort of wrap up and conclude, what I would ask everyone here today to do is to think about, what does safety mean to you personally? And what does it mean to your company and organisation? Because the two need to align. You need to have a plan. Your companies need to have plans around how do you really make safety work. What you saw there is Network Rails. If you want to take that and use it, absolutely happy days. That's absolutely cool. That's how we worked out what we need to do for safety at the moment. It will change, it will improve, but that's where we are at the moment. Please use it, but more importantly, think about what does safety and safety leadership mean for you personally and your teams, because when you get that, our safety performance will improve, and the tragic deaths that we've had over the last few years will continue to be removed out of our industry, and that's got to be the aim, that everyone goes home safe every day. So hopefully that's useful. Thank you ever so much for the invite, and many thanks for your time.